Hey guys, so welcome back to another episode of the Ojiko podcast. Hopefully the sound of this thing sounds alright. So I'm going to get straight into it. So recently, excuse me, recently the an ESPN sports host or sports anchorman as they call it in the US recently came out with a statement. His name is Stephen A. Smith. Of course, many people know him. So I shouldn't give him that sort of introduction. I should have just said Stephen A. Smith. Most people involved in sports, especially MMA, of course, you'll know who he is. I know who he is. Just it's been a long while since he's kind of crossed my mind, and his name's crossed over my desk. So recently, he made a statement saying that he doesn't really like seeing females fight fight at all. He doesn't like seeing women's MMA. That the thoughts and the idea and just the sight of two female athletes fighting just puts him off, just sets him off. And when I saw the statement for the first time, it was kind of like, okay, well that's your opinion. You're entitled to your opinion, but it's kind of strange because why would you say that? Because it's your job and you're paid a lot of money. I think I did some research on this, and I think is it last year or so he was paid approximately $19 million for the whole year for just basically reporting. And does he commentate? I'm not sure. The people I know that commentate on UFC sports are DC Cromie, Dominic Cruz, Michael Bisping, and a few other names. So, but these are the guys that I just mentioned, are the guys who have actually been in the octagon. They've sparred, they've trained, they've actually done the sport, so they've got the first-hand experience of, fighting and being punched in the head. They've got that first-hand experience. This person doesn't. So, but going back to what he said, what he said in a Twitter post, this is what ESPN posted, and what another MMA group who follows the sport closely, they stated, quoted his words: When I think about pugilistic sports, I don't like seeing women involved in that. I don't want to see women fighting in the octagon and stuff like that. So it's kind of weird. I'm sure he's been reporting on sports news, especially MMA, for a long, long time. So for me, it just seemed a bit awkward and weird that he should come out saying this. If he really didn't like it, he would have stopped reporting on the sports, giving news on the sport, and interviewing athletes related who do this sport a long, long time ago. It's strange they're just coming out now saying this, and no one's ever really complained. I think he even said, and I didn't write down it, but I remember in my mind vividly, he was saying that he would never like to see a female mixed martial artist athlete go up against a male MMA athlete, and there's never ever been that sort of proposition being made, even in an organization such as the UFC, where I'm not trying to shit on anyone here, but it's no secret the UFC does treat their fighters in a not so nice way. I think when you're in the UFC, you may not get paid as much. So this is what I've been hearing. You may not be paid as much as you'd like, as you would potentially be paid at other organizations. Pride, One Championship, and Bellator. But I think the reason why they get away with it is because the UFC has that star power. It's a brand that's known all around the world. It's a household name everywhere, especially in the United States. So, if you fought in the UFC, at least that's where you can kind of cement a name for yourself within the niche of mixed martial arts. And, well, in sports in general, because it's the one organization that people know very, very well. It's one that stands out in the sports of MMA. Excuse me. They're known so well to the point that I remember there was a post on YouTube, a video, but it was something that's going on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. Someone had even thought that the sport of MMA is called UFC, and they had to be corrected. No, the UFC is an organization that promotes the sport. They hold, events that basically are mixed martial arts fights and so on. The sport itself is called MMA, mixed martial arts. So the sport itself is called mixed martial arts, whilst one of the organizations, fighting organizations that promotes the sport and host sporting events which are MMA fights, is called UFC, which is just one of them. The other organizations are Bellator, One Championship, Pride. There's many of us, but those ones that stand out in my mind properly and vividly. So it did kind of. I wasn't offended so much, but I was really taken aback by his statement where he said, and this comes back to what I thought from my own past experience. It's annoying when someone has no first-hand experience of something of a particular, let's say, a particular job, and they make the statement, they have the opinion, which they're entitled to have their opinion. That's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. The only thing is, your opinion isn't necessarily correct, which of course is determined by what most people in the world think. Unfortunately, that's just part of human nature. You're entitled to your opinion, but if you've got no experience with doing that job, if you've never done it before, then really, you really should keep your mouth shut and just keep quiet. I mean, many people have been saying that he's such a fucking idiot, a freaking idiot, for saying what he said, and especially when he can't even spot or do like a coach, what do you call it, mitts and pads, which is what I've done so far with my in my own lessons. Basically just hitting pads 1, 2, hitting pads so many times, and God, I just remember the first time I did it with my coach. You're on pads, so it's like a left, you hit the left pads 1 or 2, 3. So many times that you're instructed to do so by your coach, and you hit the other pads another amount of times, something like that. And there was a video that which from what I've been hearing, sounded like an accident. It was posted mistakenly by his coach or so, whatever. But I'm sure he's a person. I'm sure it was Stephen A. Smith who posted that video, which made him look absolutely ridiculous, and probably made his coach look even more ridiculous, because if you think about it, you're the student, you're going to follow what your coach says, because you're going to assume, you will assume that your coach knows what they're doing. They're the teacher. So, either the coach probably wanted to embarrass him, or maybe the coach genuinely just didn't know what he was, what they were doing, because he was throwing at his right hand, and then his left hand looks like it's throwing what some people would term the dick punch, because it's going so low that in the real world, if you're in a fight in the octagon, if you're going to punch down below your opponents, just below their waist, well, that's not going to do anything. It's not going to help you at all in your attack. Actually, it's going to help your opponent, because you're going to leave yourself open for attack, because your hand's going to be, your upper part of your body is not going to be guarded, basically. So, I mean, when you post something like that, and then a year later, you say something like this, you're saying that these a certain number of people, this gender of people, women, shouldn't be allowed to fight. You really do look like a stupid idiot. You really do look very, very ridiculous. And on another point, it's no secret that certain people, especially from what I gather, ESPN, some of their presenters, the anchormen and women, have to say certain things just to so that the viewers, so they can just keep and maintain that that traffic of attention. So they always have that amount of attention on what's being said, and for me, someone who talks a lot basically has nothing to offer. If they're doing too much of this, they haven't got much going upstairs. And I've got first-hand experience of it. Not that I've done that myself. I mean, I've never been the sort of person to run my mouth unless you've insulted me really badly. Then I'll do so, or I may run my mouth in a joking manner, but not necessarily to disrespect the other person, but just to joke around. That's fine. But when you don't know something, when you don't know anything about particular subjects or thing, don't say anything. If or keep what you have to say to a minimal amount. Don't talk too much about on the subject. Try and learn about it. Know what you're talking about, because that's the problem about that I've come across. Especially in this society today, not just here in the UK but around the world, and it's something that happens that I see a lot in men. If we don't know something, from my own experience, a lot of men just won't admit it. They just play along and pretend that they know what they're talking about, and And for me, from what I've seen, from my own experience, just to give you some more details, that when I experienced this myself firsthand in the real world, was when I went to get my car sorted out, and I could tell that the mechanic just didn't know what was talking about, pointing at this. I mean, I'm not a mechanic, but I've driven enough cars in my time to know my way around the car, the engine and so on. But that's just an example. When people don't know what they're talking about, they refuse to admit to it and just carry on talking a lot of nonsense. And there was a lot of reaction from the mixed martial arts community, the MMA community. Don't know why I can't say that in a sentence. There wasn't really good reaction though from one particular female fighter. But to start off with, Gilbert Burns, who is going to be fighting soon, he said, "Well, who even cares about what this guy wants to see? Just close your eyes, clown." Another fighter, Weili Zhang, she just mainly said, "Shut up." Another fighter, Polish fighter, who is a good friend of Jan Blachowicz, who is yet to fight Israel Adesanya soon in March. She said, and she said it quite candidly actually, without sounding too rude, or just was almost like the sort of response you get from an educated person, which was short, precise, but straight to the point in a candid way. Excuse me. Now, she said, "I appreciate your transparency, Stephen A. Smith, although I wish everyone at ESPN and throughout the world saw women's sports in a positive light. I assure you that we women don't need your support." Now, you can kind of get the gist of what she's saying there. Thank you for your opinion. You're entitled to your opinion. I, and I'm sure many other MMA athletes, but men and women, even many MMA fans, not just MMA fans, but fans who like watching combat sports, they all believe you have your right to be entitled to your opinion, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're correct. And she more or less said that it's okay, say what you like, do what you like, but we just won't be taking you seriously anymore in the future. You don't need your support. We won't be listening to your opinion anymore. It won't really matter. Another athlete, Laura Sanko, a lot to say here, but I think the emoji sums it up just fine. Like Chris Cyborg, she said, "Come on, Sonny." She actually posted the video. That I just talked about of him training with his coach last year, just like this time last year, but in January, in the middle of January in 2020. She was referring to that. She posted a clip of it because many people shared it around social media, on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, wherever, and she was laughing, and many people were laughing at it because that's not how you punch. And many people who are novices to the sport, including myself in that, they were looking at that thinking, what are you doing? Because why would you be punching down below? Where punches will really hurt your opponent will be the first place will be your face, your head, and the second place, of course, would be anywhere below your face, your midsection, your abdomen, chest, wherever. But your face and your head are the most vulnerable places when it comes to getting hit by your opponent with strikes. And Tim Mean said, "I don't want to see Stephen A. Smith hit mitts again. I know women that would hurt this one." So likewise, Stephen A. Smith is saying that he doesn't want to see women he doesn't want to see female athletes in MMA fight anymore. Some other people are saying, after seeing that ridiculous clip of him, don't know what it was, but doing something stupid, after seeing that clip, they don't want to see him hitting mitts either, because that was probably even more ridiculous than what he's trying to say about female athletes in MMA. So, God, this is, I know I've said it, I know I've kind of ranted on about this and kind of sound like a broken record, but it's just one of those topics that I talk about in my podcast. I wish I had like a co-host here with me, could discuss about it and talk about it, because it's really annoying. You know your job, you've been doing it for so well, you've perfected your craft along the way, you've learned lots of things to help to improve your craft, but you know what you're doing, and then you have the experience, you have the first-hand knowledge, you have the first-hand experience, but then you have someone else who doesn't fight, who's never been inside the octagon, who's never been in a professional fight. And from that video, I should have said this earlier, probably has never been on mitts or sparred just for practice, has never has never been in a kickboxing lesson with a kickboxing coach or boxing coach or any sort of combat sports, just for training, not even for competing, but just for training, has probably never done it before. And I think from looking at that video, looking at the way he was hitting those mitts, especially with his left hand, which was going down below what you'd normally think is down below, past the point of your opponent's waist, he probably hasn't, because that looked so ridiculous. In my first lesson with my coach, we never did anything like that at all. And I thought looking at the videos of my Instagram posts, if you do follow me on Instagram, you see some posts I've done and I've posted since the summer of 2020 when I had my first lesson. I've always thought that my striking was actually quite sloppy, that I need to improve on that. And speed and precision needs to be fast and sharp, just straight to the point, and really alive. I'm not sure how else I can explain it, but it needs to be a lot better. But I've never seen anyone, or I've never been in a lesson whereby your coach will tell you to, or even almost direct you that you should hit one of your strikes to go downwards, kind of like almost below your opponent's waist. That's the best way I can describe it. But I've never seen it. That looks utterly ridiculous. But anyway, and I'm sure he's not going to be. This is not going to be the. This hasn't been the first time that someone in his position has said something like this, and likewise, I'm sure it will not be the last time. Now, in other news on the MMA scene, Dustin Poirier, and I mentioned this in my last podcast, and probably in the podcast before that, Dustin Poirier has accepted McGregor's offer, or rather it was a demand, because from what I was hearing, what I was seeing on YouTube, even from his coach Kavanagh, Conor, after his loss to Poirier at UFC 257, after that TKO, he it was said that he was almost harassing the UFC and other people, the higher ups in the organization. That he wants another fight with Dustin Poirier. He wants a trilogy fight, basically. So Dustin Poirier accepted the offer. And Charles Oliveira, who, from what I can see, from what I've learned, potentially would have had a fight scheduled with Poirier, but I think after Oliveira was it Oliveira, was it someone else? I can't remember, but I think it was Oliveira or Chandler. But someone did send an offer to Poirier, but he didn't reply. So I think he didn't. The fight just didn't interest him. I think it was Oliveira. And now he's quite worried, because now potentially if Poirier Poirier has accepted the fight from McGregor, and all that's left now is for the UFC and Dana White to more or less finalize the whole thing and make it official. And I think I could say it's more than likely, but what do I know? I'm still learning so much about all the moves in this sport and what certain terms and definitions mean, but possibly it could happen. Knowing Conor McGregor, whatever he wants, usually there's always been this sort of history of him always getting his way. So possibly that could happen, maybe not, I could be wrong. And yeah, so Charles Oliveira is now concerned that he's not going to get the opportunity to fight Poirier, and then hence if he beats Poirier, will be the lightweight champion and get that lovely belt. Now it's February the 6th as I'm recording this podcast, and yesterday was February the 5th, and yesterday was it's still February the 5th in the USA, but anyway, that's Paige Van Zandt was going to make her debut in Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, and at her weigh-in, and this is how it was put on one of the YouTube channels that I saw the news, how this was reported, because I saw it was on YouTube. I saw this. I saw that at the weigh-ins, she and another female athlete who goes by the name of Britton Hart, some people's names, but I'm not going to laugh at that. But it looked like they did get into during the was it weigh-ins or stare downs? They did get into almost like a heated altercation incident there. I think was it a Brit? But definitely from the looks of it, from what I saw, Britton Hart started it first. I think she made the first move, and then Paige, obviously, naturally defending herself, I think seized Hart by the throat and actually wanted to throw a punch. And what I was saying before is that it was kind of funny how the the narrator of the YouTube channel that was reporting this reported it. They started off by saying that the UFC community or the UFC are shocked by what they saw. The stare downs. I'm like, for crying out loud, you're in combat sports, for God's sakes, and this isn't like the other sports. It's not like the other sports of football, American football, rugby, baseball, soccer, or the the Olympics or cricket. This is a sport whereby the athletes, the fighters, do have, let's say, there isn't one fighter that another fighter knows that between the two of them there's unfinished business. There's a score to settle. So when they see each other, they're not always necessarily happy to be in the other person's company, in their midst. So one thing can lead to another, and it just set off an argument. That argument can spill out into a physical altercation. So I laughed when they opened with that opening headline that the UFC are shocked by what they saw at Paige Van Zandt's debut stare down at bare knuckle fighting championship. But for me, I can't say that I was shocked. In combat sports, it happens, especially in MMA and boxing. Now, Britain's word to Van Zandt was, "You got it twisted. This ain't MMA." What did I write? This ain't MMA. You can't choke. And it was just I was just surprised at the supposed reaction from the UFC. I mean, I didn't see any other. There was a few fighters that commented on this. I think and I can't remember their names right now, but I think is it Mike Perry? No, Mike Perry didn't comment on the situation that happened in the stare down, but I think he wished Paige Van Zandt good luck. I think they've been good friends for some time. But I was just taken aback by the UFC's supposed shock at the whole encounter. And last but not least, guys, UFC Vegas, which is going to be happening today, as I'm recording this podcast, the 6th of February in Las Vegas. So really the main event that I really wanted to, that really interests me, though I may watch the whole card, depends how the whole thing is going, really, because again, I'm a novice to the sport, still new to the sport, so I haven't really gotten a taste for I haven't really seen each athlete's performance in the cage before. I've not seen every athlete's performance, or at least enough of them anyway, because I do know of some other people that have been invested in the sport for a long time. They're MMA veterans, and they will watch they'll watch the fight card, but they're only going to watch the main card events, essentially the main event and co-main event. Other fights, they probably just doesn't interest them anymore. That doesn't interest them at all, so they just switch off whatever they're watching it on. But for me, I still want to watch all of them just as much as I can, to learn as much as possible about MMA. So, but the main event, Alexander Volkov versus Alistair Overeem, and I remember Alistair Overeem for a fight that he had against Rozenstruik. I can't remember the exact date, but this was mentioned on a particular podcast. It's the Weigh-In podcast with Josh Thompson and John McCarthy. I was listening to this was when they're trying to still growing. They had about 10,000 subscribers. Let me just check the date of this fight. I think it would have happened sometime. Is it 2020, last year or so? No, I think it would have happened in 2019. What stands out for me is that in this particular fight, Alistair Overeem, when he was facing Rozenstruik, it's the heavyweight division. I think towards the end of the fight, Rozenstruik threw a really heavy right hand that tore open Overeem's lip. It was a really deep cut. The whole chunk of flesh of Overeem's lip had been stripped completely away, and so at the end of that fight that evening, he had to have emergency surgery to to surgically, I'm not a doctor, but I'm hoping you're using the right terms, to surgically reattach the piece of flesh that had been taken away from Overeem slip. It was really disgusting and really graphical. But yeah, but watching that fight, Overeem versus Rozenstruik, I have to say Overeem, despite his height and his size, because he's a big muscular guy, but not as in bodybuilder and big like that. You know, from what I could see in the fight, it was good striking and his takedowns were good, and he's had good ground game. He had particularly good ground game, and Rozenstruik, I have to say, I think that punch really that really ended it badly for Overeem. But you know, that was that fight. But I'm trying to compare this to the other guy, Volkov, Alexander Volkov, who I've seen him fight against Blades. Blades, what, Blaydes. I hope I'm spelling that Blades correct. It's pronouncing that correctly, or is it should be Blades or Blade? No, I think it's Blades. Let me just stick with Blades because I'm just gonna start sounding silly here. This guy is significantly slimmer than Overeem, and in that fight when he was fighting Blades, he did seem to gas out quite easily. As in, should I say, or can I say, his cardio wasn't really good or on point. Because Overeem, I noticed, did move a bit more power, a bit more agility, even though he's a lot bigger. But Overeem did seem, when he was fighting Rozenstruik, and before he had that nasty injury on his face, he did seem a lot quicker than Volkov did when he was fighting Blades. So it will be an interesting match. But for my money, I would say that Overeem would win this fight against Volkov. I'd say I'm a novice, but I can only be saying that for so long. Eventually, I have to back up my whatever I say with evidence, and I'm researching stuff all the time, doing my homework before I make these podcasts. But yeah, for that main event today, it's February the 6th. Now, as I'm recording this podcast, guys, I would say that out in that fight between Alexander Volkov and Alistair Overeem, I would say that Alistair Overeem would win. That's my take on it. But guys, don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this, and if you enjoyed if you enjoy my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also find my podcast uploaded to Spotify, Podchaser, Google Podcast, and the Apple Podcast. Again, I'm still trying to sort it out. For some reason, it's just not accepting my artwork for some random reason. It's something that I'm just going to have to keep trying to get it sorted out, because I know once I get my podcast onto Apple Podcast, then there's a better chance of it reaching other platforms around the world. You can also catch me on Twitter and Twitter, my name's Ojiko. Facebook, my name's Ojiko, and on Instagram, my name's Ojiko1. So guys, I'm going to end my rambling there. Thanks.